Hi, everybody. Thanks for attending today's webinar, Improve Supply Chain Visibility to Reduce Inventory Out of Stocks. This is brought to you by Traverse Systems. This is part two of a two-part webinar series focused on supply chain visibility. We're glad to have you. Just a few housekeeping notes before we get started. All in, we should be about 45 minutes. That includes a live Q&A at the end of today's session. If you have any questions for our presenters, we've got three really good ones. Simply type in your question, click submit. We will get to as many of them as we can. If we can't get to some of them, the team will reach out to you offline. Regarding the environment that you're in, there's no dial-in option. You'll be hearing the volume through your PC speakers. The audio is not loud enough for you. Put on some headphones. You can min-max all the windows that you see. If you want to view the slide deck, for example, in full screen mode, go ahead and do that. And then finally, at the bottom of the screen, you'll see some different icons, widgets that enable you to do a few different things. The one I really want you to focus on is the Resource Center. Within that, Traverse is hosting some content. We've got a link to the last webinar, part one of this series, as well as like a 6.5, 7-minute highlight reel that kind of gives you the Cliff Notes version of that you can get in and out of really quickly. And actually, this is final. This is the final thing I'll say before we introduce today's speakers. We're recording today's session, so we'll get the on-demand version of this out to you within the next 24 hours, so be on the lookout for that. So I want to briefly introduce today's speakers. We've got a really good lineup. They're going to do a great job today. We've got Greg Holder. Greg is the co-founder and CEO of Traverse. He's going to talk a little bit about why we created Vision, why Traverse created Vision, and how it's different than other solutions out there. He's going to dive deep into that. Richard Wiljum, he's the Vice President of Sales and Marketing. Done a number of these with Richard, glad to have him back. And then Kip Kapelke, he's a sales engineer. He's going to talk a little bit about the organizations that should be using Vision, the different personas within an organization, and show you the technology in action. So with that being said, I'm going to hand the floor over to Richard. Richard, to get us started today, why don't you tell the folks out there that maybe didn't attend the first session, what it was about, just a brief summary of it.
Thank you, Jason. Good morning to some, good afternoon to most. On behalf of the entire Traverse Systems team, I want to thank you all for attending our session today. On December 7th, we did a session where we kind of outlined some of the inventory challenges companies are facing that was leading to not only out of stocks, but lost sales as well too. Today, we're going to share with you our solution, Vision, which is a supply chain visibility solution, which helps companies mitigate many of these supply chain challenges they are facing today. But before we do that, Jason, let me do a quick recap of some of the challenges these companies were facing. In a recent study done by the IHL Group, they estimated $340 billion in sales losses in 2022 alone for North America. They attributed to what we call, to what they call inventory distortion. That is a combination of having too much of the wrong inventory and not enough of the right inventory. And one of the stunning figures from that study was, of that 340 billion, 129 billion of it could be directly attributed to supplier performance issues. And that's really kind of where we want to focus on today. So if you are a grocer, or if you are a traditional retailer, or if you're an e-com business sitting in our audience today, what do those numbers mean to you? I can tell you in that same study done by IHL Group, and I believe this figure was specific for grocery, that for every 5 items that retailer or that consumer went and looked for, they only went home with 4 of them. In a separate survey done by Retail Insight, the respondents indicated that 71% of them said the out-of-stock situation is worse today than it was pre-pandemic. So what does that mean to these companies watching today? Obviously, in the short term, lost sales, lost opportunity cost, and lost margin. What may be more problematic in the long term is erosion of that brand loyalty. In today's hyper-competitive environment, that is just simply not sustainable. So for these reasons, we developed Vision to help companies mitigate many of these supply chain challenges. So Jason, I think that kind of gives you an overview of what we talked about last time.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I appreciate that. We're going to move over to Greg now. Greg, as you look at the market, there's a lot of visibility solutions out there. What makes Vision different? And if you could tell the folks out there why you created it.
Perfect. Thank you, Jason. And thank you, Richard, for an excellent introduction.
Thank you.
The three things that stand out that actually makes us different as a company is our approach to the business, the people that we service, and our fantastic product support. Diving a little bit more into each one of those, the different visibility solutions that we saw in the market seem to typically focus on the movement of product from point A to point B. And our different approach to that, we recognize that the entire visibility begins with the creation of a purchase order. And there are different milestones that happen within that purchase order life cycle that gives the stakeholders insight into what's happening. And with that insight, with that visibility, we can make decisions, make more business decisions, oriented decisions, or at least give some of the stakeholders the ability to sleep at night. Related to the people we serve, when you go back again to think about the traditional visibility type packages that you see, they are really selling to the experts within their vertical that they're selling into. And when we talk about it, when you hear me talk about what we do with Vision, you'll hear me talk a whole lot about the casual user. So these are the people that need information, visibility information about that purchase order lifecycle that might not necessarily be the experts. These are the people that don't have access to a TMS. These are the people that don't have access to a WMS. These are the people that don't get EDI information, but they are benefactors of having all that information into one complete package where they can sign on and get information about the items that they care about or the purchase orders that they care about. And so listed on the screen, you see a little bit of the casual users that we might kind of concentrate on. What we're going to focus on today is we're going to talk about the merchant, or Kip's going to go over some stuff related to the merchant or the buying organization, also the supply chain user, as well as the store manager. And we'll go through some examples related to that. Then the final thing that makes us really different is, we're all, for the most part, everybody that's involved with Traverse Systems have a retail background. And so we really understand what's happening in the supply chain space. But most importantly, we care about our customers. And so you see on the screen, white glove support. That's really the type of the thing that we think sets us apart. These other visibility programs or organizations are focused on acquiring new customers. Well, we're focused on answering the customers' questions, helping them get the information that they need, bring information from disparate execution systems into one location so that they can really understand what's happening on that inbound supply chain. So I think why we created Vision. Well, Richard mentioned in his opening that a lot of the causes to supply or to out of stocks on the shelves could be due to vendor performance issues. Our very first product, which we call the platform, is a vendor performance solution. And really, when we created the platform 23 years ago, this month, we really set out to do really three different things. We wanted to help retailers automate the identification of supply chain failures, calculate penalties if there's a penalty or chargeback that should be involved that we want to communicate to the supplier. And we wanted to be able to tell the supplier when they didn't meet our expectations. And so those are the top three. And in order to do that, we recognized that we needed to get data from retail execution systems, and we need to bring them into one location, and that location we could write algorithms that look for all these exceptions. We've been doing that for 23 years, and over the 23 years, our customers have come to us time and time again and said, hey, you do a great job of presenting this information and relating all of this, what most would expect to be unrelatable information, and putting it all in one location, but you're giving it to us after the fact. It's like driving the car looking through the rear view mirror. Now, we recognize that many of our customers said, if you can get that data in a real-time environment and we can get ahead of some of these problems, we can prevent some of these issues with some intelligence from a machine perspective and even human intervention. And so that was kind of the genesis of it. You can see on the screen some of the data sources that we use, that we bring into Vision. It's a different product. It's a brand new product, but we still, because of our heritage of bringing data from these execution systems into one location and relating them, we use that same foundation as a go forward with from a Vision perspective. One of the things that makes the products unique is we have a data enrichment process that is constantly looking at all of the different transactions of data that we have, and constantly enriching data so that the casual user, every time they get into the system, they might have more information than what they've had before. And so that really excites us. And just one more thing, that really, why would we create it? We understand from a business perspective, we understand when we were working in business, when we were in retail operations, when we were in the retail front office, when we were buying for different retailers, we did not have this information available to us in a single location. We oftentimes would have to go either send an email or make a phone call or log into multiple different systems and what we call swivel chair research to try and figure out what's happening. And I believe that there's a lot of customers or a lot of people out there that's watching this webinar today that are nodding their heads and they're saying, yes, we take data from all these systems, but instead of having one location where we go see it, we put it in an Excel spreadsheet and we email an Excel spreadsheet for each one of our meetings. And so really, we knew that there's a better way. Why do we create it? That's it.
Great, that's awesome. So we're going to move over to you, Kip. Greg obviously talked about why we created it. Now, Kip, we want to talk a little bit about the types of organizations that would use Vision and the personas within those organizations. Can you elaborate on that for the folks out there?
Absolutely, Jason. And I think Richard said it at the top of the session, whether you're in grocery, manufacturing, if you're moving product from point A to point B, as Greg said, with a lot of points in between, right? There's a lot happening in between A and B there. But really anybody that's moving that product is a good possibility for utilizing this application. But within kind of that retail grocer type entity, we'll talk through some of the personas, some of those teams within those organizations, the business partners that will really benefit from this. And I kind of made a joke the other day, and I think it resonated quite well. Might have even been on our very first session, but we see darn near everybody in the organization being able to benefit from this. And I think I joked that, HR might be the only department that wouldn't utilize this on a pretty consistent basis. And, the more I dig into it and the more I work with folks, I think the more true that is, that everybody can utilize it. So one of the first personas here is, we're encapsulating Martha Merchant, right? So that's anybody that's buyer, product manager, procurement, demand planner, any of those different names kind of fall into this Martha Merchant bucket. And, ultimately, they're a high performing merchant and they're trying to hit those margin goals, right? So driving sales, driving margin, moving that inventory through inventory turn. So those are some of those big challenges and some of the goals and frustrations that Martha Merchant has. You can kind of read on the screen here. But what I'm more excited about is getting into some of the solutions and how do we address some of those challenges. So somebody like a Martha, having the ability to immediately locate POs at risk, and I'll show you in the live application what some of those alerts and things may be. Open to buy is a huge thing for the merchants, right? On a monthly basis, especially on a quarterly and going into a yearly basis, if they're reporting to Wall Street, really important to make sure that things are coming in the appropriate time frame to manage that open to buy process. High performing orders. Everybody's got, your top 10 or best selling products. I know in my past life, every week we were going through a bestseller, worst seller and trying to figure out what we were doing for bestsellers to get more of it in front of our customers, and things that were underperforming. How do we try and exit, have an exit strategy to get out of some of that? So this tool will really help further upstream as you're identifying those bestseller, worst sellers, and being able to make some of those really informed decisions. So with that, I'm going to jump over to the application and just kind of get people a little excited about what the application looks like.
So while Kip is moving into the application, let me make one quick comment. I'm an old distribution operations guy, and one of the reasons we like to focus on Martha Merchant is because they don't have relationships with the distribution operations or the transportation guys. They have relationships with the vendor community. So that's where they typically get their data. They get it from the vendor, and you don't want to receive a phone call that says the vendor said they shipped it. It's in 10 brown boxes. It should be in your distribution center. We would prefer them to log into the application and take a look at the purchase orders that they care about, and they can see everything right here at their fingertips.
And Greg, awesome call. When I started my corporate retail career, it was in a buying office for a couple of years. So, I kind of think of this as things that I would have really enjoyed having in that one-stop shop and not being either the old CICS green screens or sending an email to my supply chain partners because I couldn't see into the TMS system and what routing was possibly done, or was an ASN sent? Is the truck actually moving yet? So some of that was just latent and getting to me, and loved the fact that this kind of addresses some of those needs. We were a highly promotional organization, so whether it's a monthly advertisement coming into like a back to school time frame or a holiday time frame, maybe it was brand launches or special event launches. This allows, through the Vision application, allows us to build and it's sort of ad hoc. You can come in and build these to whatever makes the most sense. But the way that I built this for Martha was, hey, can I provide kind of that high level for the organization, some of the next big sales events, and then maybe next month I've got the next big thing. So where am I at as far as product moving through that supply chain? What's kind of cool is we've got some map features that you can click on and see, if we're getting that information for real-time updates, kind of that check call of the carrier moving across the country, we can see product literally as it's moving from point A to point B. You got your high-level summary information. What's nice is I can build in some aggregate, so maybe I don't want to just see the total company. That might be for my advertising or promotions team that really needs to see just the big picture and is stuff moving for my entire ad. Where it gets a little bit more specific here is for all the different departments. So maybe I want to see, are there areas that maybe are at risk? So for this one, it's an event that's going to happen in the next 2 or 3 weeks. At this point, if I've got stuff in the final destination, that's probably a little bit early, but I'm excited that I've got product already in stores and at the location. So I give that kind of a soft warning, and I can conditional format to say, hey, if there's anything that hasn't received or verified through the distribution network yet, I might want to start being a little bit more concerned about that. And if I'm in these departments, I want to go and drill down a little further and see what POs are causing those issues. And gosh darn it, because this thing should be on the sales floor in a couple of weeks to support an ad, if I don't have ASN information, good chance that that product isn't moving yet, and I'm flagging that as a much higher risk as far as I probably have to take some action and reach out to my vendors and see what sort of expedited shipping modes can I utilize to get that product in. So it just kind of build it in a 3-tier. And again, you guys have ultimate flexibility of high level, a little bit more aggregate by each of the different departments or buying groups, and then getting into the PO level itself, and you can start digging into details there. What's really slick about the application is not only can I do this for the total company, but let's say I want to build it, and you'll notice that it says that there's user setting applied. Maybe I'm just the decorative art office. If you see Department 850 here and I'm decorative art, I don't really care as much about what the rest of the organization is doing. I care about my product moving through that supply chain. So I built that same special event view, but it's a little bit higher level here, and digging into the details that are specific to me. These are all my purchase orders that are assigned to that particular event.
Hey, real quick, I just want to go back to what you talked about. You said, you're a former distributor, you're kind of looking at this through a different lens. How is what you said, how is that different, just really quickly, and you might have already hit on it, but how is that different than the other visibility solutions that are out there that organizations are using right now?
Well, I like the way that we have, I like the capabilities to be able to summarize and then drill into the details. So I believe, I've said this, I think, on the previous webinar back on December 7th, I believe that this is an application that a buyer or that somebody that might be in the advertising group will come in every morning, maybe before they go home, pick up an iPad and just look at what Kip's showing, just to look at what what they care about and to see the status and how it might have changed overnight. Or then again, right around lunchtime and again before they go home at the end of the night. And I just think that the ability to easily summarize the things that I care about. So there's also other little small nuances to just my departments. They might want to track a handful of purchase orders. Maybe they don't want to track all of their purchase orders. Maybe they have 4 or 5 purchase orders that they really care about. And those might change from week to week. But there's special reporting on those 5 POs, or it could be, Kip mentioned it, the hot items or the leading items are in his intro. So maybe I have 5 or 6 items that I really care about, and I want to see what the process and how they're moving throughout the supply chain. So I just think that we're going to be a go-to or a live-in application and for a broader audience, not just an expert audience. I hope that makes sense.
But it can get more laser focused than just the traditional solution
Certainly.
out there right now. Yeah. Okay. Sorry about that, Kip.
That's
before it
perfect.
left me, I wanted to ask that question.
Absolutely. Well, I think there's much more that I'd love to show, but I think in the amount of time that I have, that hopefully just piques your interest and shows kind of what the functionality of the application is. So I'm going to jump back over to the PowerPoint, and we'll talk through a little bit of that value proposition. So we've identified what those challenges typically are for these teams, how the Vision solution can provide answers for that, and then what are some of those perceived KPIs or values on the back end. So what we're seeing, kind of out in the industry is that by having that good visibility tool, having, ways to identify those areas of opportunity and really make sure that that right product is getting at the right place at the right time, we're seeing that ultimate net margin improvement, right? So that's, I think, one of the big pieces there is, driving those top line sales, but then making sure that they're very productive sales. Back in my world, sales, margin, inventory turn were the big 3 that, in my buying office, we were really trying to adhere to. All right, so similarly, so that was really kind of looking at that, merchant user procurement teams, demand planning teams. I think they could all benefit from that. Then you got your supply chain, right? So after I had moved out of the buying office, I spent a decade in supply chain, working anywhere from, with a vendor compliance program, working with, the outward vendors themselves and trying to just improve those behaviors, right? Because ultimately we're just trying to remove any of those supply chain disruptions and get the right product in at the right time. So I'm also very familiar with this role. And I love the way that Sarah has it quoted here, that give me a solution that alerts business partners of issues, right? So they answer to a lot of those stakeholders. They're really trying to, identify any of those unplanned disruptions and how do they mitigate that and provide solutions to, save the sale and get product back in. So some of the things that the Vision will provide for somebody on that supply chain relations team or supply chain services team, easy access to all those movements, carrier information, delivery statuses. You can see literally where it is, as Greg mentioned, a couple times throughout the day, refresh and just see how your product is moving through. You can search for an individual purchase order if you know it. Maybe it's the best-selling item you have. Or you can do, these ad hoc groups of POs or special events where you can chunk them all together and kind of see how that whole program is behaving for you. One of the biggest things is being able to provide that answer to the stakeholder, and hopefully even more than that, what you saw with Martha is give it to them, right? So how do we teach them to research their own information, and when they do reach out to the supply chain team, hopefully it's a much more well thought question, and you're really driving business versus just asking where's my stuff. So answering those stakeholder questions and providing those answers. System of record, so in the event that you need to go back and look at product as it was moving through, it is kind of nice for some historical purposes. And just another one is weather, right? Right now there's weather on the West Coast. It seems like California has been getting beat up for a week or 2 already. There could be, we're late in the year here, so snowstorms in the Northeast. It's nice to be able to just plunk in some information about certain regions and quickly identify POs that are either already in motion or soon to be in motion, and potentially make, corrective action or change where those things are going before it ends up in that location. So just love the flexibility of the application, and I'll jump in and show a couple of things here. So I think one of them we talked about was alerts, and I think what's really cool here is that I can go in and take a look and build alerts into the application. Say I want to view this guy. What's nice is I can go in and have it automatically alert me for individualized POs, and soon to be, the capability of doing it for chunks or groups of POs. Is not only can I go in and fish for myself and look to see what's happening, but how can I get those proactive alerts before I even jump into the application and look? So there's a multitude of different things that we can do here, but was there any PO date changes? Did routing get requested for it? Did the product ever arrive in the DC? And then we can even drill it in further to where maybe I want to see like at 85% of a purchase order being received. I will get an email notification, or I can select it to just be a pop-up in the Vision application itself. So I build those thresholds. I build what my tolerances are into the system and let it alert me when there's an issue. So, it's just, I think it's awesome to be able to have that proactive. Looking back at my days of being in the office and supporting the offices, to be able to give them that tool and have the comfort level and the ability to do that, I think would be fantastic.
So let me add a little bit to that. Our mantra at this company is, why do we have people doing what computers can do well? So if there's an opportunity for us to have the computer to do something to free up a person to do what people are better at, then we do that. And this is just another one of those small examples. There's an unlimited number of opportunities to save human time, to free them up to do other things that are more important. And that's kind of the things that we've done in all of our products over the last 23 years. How do we make people more efficient by programming computers to do what computers do well?
I think it's fantastic. And this is something that, man, I wish I had back in the day. And if you're seeing it, I'm kind of editing this one live. So maybe I said I wanted to drop my percent received to 75. So once it hits that 75% based on units, I could set it up as a cost depending on what's more important to you. Configure that as a part of it. I also want to be notified if I don't have routing. So in my past life, routing was expected prior to the start ship date. So, start giving me notifications if the product hasn't been routed, because now I can quickly determine, hey, get the routing in tomorrow to still potentially save it. And if it still isn't in tomorrow, I might need to prepay it to DC or even have it go direct to store. And those are different discussions that can be had based on getting these different alerts. So just really kind of intriguing to me how we're building these alerts out and making the system that much smarter. And to your point, Greg, why go in and have to hunt and peck all the time? Why not give them a tool that they can set those thresholds and be notified if something is outside their expectations? All right, and then for supply chain, Sarah, or the supply chain services team, I think some other things we'll just hint on it really quickly, but I mentioned the severe weather. What's nice here is you can build in and take a look at product that is moving into California. So again, I've got it broken out by ship to location. So not only is this great for being able to look at total company or look at department, maybe GMM or different hierarchies that you have in your organization, your distribution centers, your stores are going to find this to be very useful. So really intensifying the California region based on some of these severe weather that they're having. Being able to identify just those 38 stores that in this demo environment are specifically in that region. All right, so that's it for the supply chain team for now, and I will toggle back over and talk about the value proposition here. So for that supply chain team, really looking at getting that right product in the right place at the right time, on-time performance. We're seeing out there in the industry that having this visibility solution, having those alerts and being able to react more timely to it, that we're actually increasing that on-time performance as much as 25%. So I think that's kind of a staggering figure there, driving those sales again. So everybody doing their part. And, I think, again, I would greatly appreciate having had a tool like this. I had about a 12-page document that used to teach people how to go in and do research on their own purchase orders so that they weren't constantly communicating to me. And even with that 12-page document and the access they had, they probably only had about an 80% view of the whole supply chain. So this is awesome, where it gives you that end-to-end from, routing or misrouting, because things that aren't happening might be just as important as the things that are happening. So getting out ahead of stuff that might not be where it needs to be in that supply chain, and then giving them that view. If you can give us the data, Greg showed that really cool slide of all the disparate systems feeding into the Vision application. If you can get us that back end delivery to stores and store scans, we can get you all the way through to darn near putting the product out on the shelf.
So Kip, I'll add one more thing to supply chain, Sarah. You had a good example of your 12-page report or 12-page of teaching people how to get in access to all these systems. Well, I was supply chain, Sarah, and I had an army of people that we had access to the information, but didn't have licenses for other people to have access to the license or to that information. And so we spent countless hours either answering questions or putting spreadsheets together, as I've already mentioned. So and you'd be copying items from one system to another system to try and get information out of it. And so once again, we're trying to put answers at the end of people's fingertips, whether you're a business user. I also happen to believe that expert users will use this application as well, not from an execution standpoint to move a piece of freight, but for knowledge and information. And just because of the way we bring this stuff into one location. So thank you for letting me take one more comment.
Absolutely. All right, and last persona for today, and kind of some of the things that are built in here. This could be DC or for stores, but where it's a little bit different for the store manager here, they might be really looking at particular product. They may have a customer that has come in and looked for something, and they want to see when this product might be back in, so that we can guarantee to get that customer back into the store, right? The last thing you want to do is start walking customers because you don't have product. And being able to then, more efficiently plan for those work resources, and, how do I tackle that inbound trailer or the trailer that's coming into my back dock and make sure that that known product is getting back out on the sales floor before anything else, right? So instead of just putting it away in the back room, being able to target those key items and getting them out on the floor. Stephen is very focused on his individual store and trying to, drive those overall sales and be just a very productive, portion of his company. So some of the things that he's interested, item level tracking. So he may not be as concerned about a group of POs for an event. He wants to look at maybe particular items. So back to that best seller, worst seller, Stephen, he's going to know exactly what those best selling items are in his store, and being able to see purchase orders that are in movement to him, I think are just invaluable to getting that product back out on the floor. Global visibility. So overall, just answering back to those stakeholders, right? Because buying offices are going to want to make sure that this product is being displayed correctly and supporting those different ad events, and just making sure that everything is the way it's supposed to be. And then tracking inbound shipments to better plan resources, like I mentioned. I think in this side, if I go back into the application, really more of that DC/store resource. So anywhere that we're getting a location identifier, whether it is a DC or an individualized store, being able to come back and, in this example, I'm just looking at things that are 2 weeks back and 2 weeks out. So I mentioned earlier, not going to get into it today's session, but, schedule some more time with us and love to geek out further. We've got flex queries. You can actually build how this application looks. So not only are you creating the tabs, but you're creating the content that comes into these different tiles or cards within those tabs. And I can change this depending on what my needs are, whether I want to look only 1 week out or back. Do I want to look, at different stages from open to buy dates to maybe a ship cancel date to a, start ship date. All of those parameters are available to me to, make those differentiations and really make the tool behave the way that I need it to, because there isn't a cookie cutter approach per se on how everybody uses this. I've spent some years here with Traverse as an account manager, and I've worked with several different retail organizations, and they all measure things and utilize this a little bit differently, and this gives you that ultimate flexibility to do so. So here it's just basically looking at that kind of higher level PO aggregate by each of the different sites. And as you've seen that I really love to do, you can go in and start to look at some of the individualized PO level information. Again, I have ultimate flexibility of reordering these sequences. I can really tweak what are some of the major data points that I'm collecting or bringing back. So all things for future discussions, but ultimately flexible and supporting whatever your needs are. Greg, you've provided some great color commentary here. What else you got for me?
Yeah, well, thank you very much. I think from a store manager perspective, one of the most powerful opportunities are when you do have one of those out of stock situations. It's not on the shelf, it's not in the back room, and you have these group of items or a single item. Enter that item, and you can see where that item is throughout the network. So, an example is you might have 6 or 7 or 8 inbound from a distribution center. You may see it on 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 other purchase orders. So you know that there's more being ordered. You may see 3 or 4 active ASNs with that item on it. So if somebody does come into the store, you can tell them that it'll be here on Friday and they can pick it up. So, having that ability to drive into the information at an item level is, I think, going to be very powerful from a store function perspective.
Absolutely agree. Good. All right, I'm going to toggle back to the presentation here and kind of wrap up the persona piece. So, stores are seeing anywhere from a 3 to 7% sales increase. This really isn't even figuring into the back end like markdown, liability. So anytime that we can get product in to meet the plan that your, Martha Merchant has set forth, the better we're driving those ultimate sales up front, but then also not cluttering up those racks. I think, Richard, you talked about that inventory distortion. So how do I make sure that I'm driving it and getting those customers in at the appropriate time, and then being able to clear out of that product and make room for that next great thing? So all of these, I think, are in play, really helping drive that overall business. And, back again, I can't stress it enough. Top line sales, inventory turn, and, net margin improvement. So awesome. I think that's it for my piece. So appreciate the time here today. And like I said earlier, very anxious to give a little bit more in detailed demonstrations to folks, because there's a lot of power in that tool and we barely scratched the surface.
Great job, Kip. We're going to move into the Q&A portion. We had a lot of questions that came in from the audience. Just for the sake of time, we're going to just take one for each of you right now, and then Richard, you'll give us a little bit of wrap in terms of how folks can get engaged with the Traverse team. So Kip, you were the star of the show today, so we're going to start with you. We've got a question from Allison, and it's specifically for you, Kip. As a former practitioner, what feature within Vision would have helped you the most?
Well, Allison, I think because I was in 2 different entities, I'm going to try and generically answer both. So I think from the buying office perspective, having that better visibility, not spending 10, 20% of my day, week, month trying to track orders and keep it all in a spreadsheet and provide answers to my senior leadership. Having a tool that could manage that for me, I think, would just allow me to do better things with my time to try and drive the overall business. As I mentioned, my past life open to buy was huge, so you could probably let things slide a little in between months, but we reported on a quarterly basis. So quarter seasons at the end of a year, very important to make sure that we weren't getting product in too early or too late. And I think this tool allows you to see things that are happening on either end of that spectrum and really driving the right business. I think from my supply chain background, I did that for about 10 years. And, I think similarly, giving the tool and teaching folks once how to use a really user-friendly, end user application versus trying to go into the old IBM CICS screens and, trying to learn a TMS application if they even had access to it. I just think that allows that supply chain team to be driving more strategic initiatives instead of answering those day-to-day issues of where's my stuff. So I think ultimately kind of a dual fold. And really it was within the same organization, and I could see both teams benefiting hugely from having something like this.
Jason, I want to answer that too,
because
I have a different answer. That's very good.
You're not the only one. You go ahead.
I think being able to tell the system what I care about whether it's a purchase order or a group of purchase orders or an item or a group of items, and getting easy access to everything about that group of body of work is probably one of the most powerful opportunities that exist out there. In addition to the fact that now our merchants can have access to it, it'll also save the supply chain people time, because we're teaching people to use an application that they have access to that should give them all those answers. So I agree completely with both the Kips, but I just wanted to add that one as well. So thanks.
We're gonna stick with you. We've got a question from Wes, and Greg. Wes said, "I already have a transportation visibility solution. What can Vision do? How can Vision help?"
Wes, thank you for a question. That's a very, very good question. So there are a lot of visibility solutions within transportation, and that simply the easiest way to state it is we'll take data from that execution system as one of our data feeds, and we'll include that in the Vision application. So all of those execution systems, whether they're transportation, a TMS, or a WMS, or if you have one of the big guys out there, Project 44 or 4 Kites, those all just become additional data sets that come into Vision that gives that casual user access to the entire purchase order life cycle, from creation to consumption, whether that consumption happens in a distribution center, or the consumption happens at a store, and eventually, or the consumption happens at a consumer's front door. So thank you for the question, Wes.
We're going to take one more. Richard, haven't heard from you in a while. We're going back to you. This is from Brady. Very simple. What sets Vision apart from your competition?
Brady, thank you for the question, and it's a pertinent one. And as Greg just said, there are countless supply chain visibility providers out there today. What I believe sets us apart is, number one, former retailers. Kip and Greg have sat in your shoes before. They have received hundreds, if not thousands, of those "where's my stuff" calls when the next big event was just around the corner. You cannot fake that type of experience, okay? And what you will see is that type of experience is in the functionality of the solution. That'd be number one. Number two, Greg kind of touched on it, is that beyond transportation visibility. There's a lot of events that occur before the movement of goods. Events that did occur, events that got disrupted, or events that didn't occur. So the ability to get updates and alerts on all those are critical. So we tend to look at the purchase order from a holistic standpoint. Greg just mentioned the term purchase order lifecycle. Being able to present that holistic view of that purchase order provides opportunities for continuous improvement as well too. And the final thing is that projects are difficult to get approved these days. We've done our research, and we believe that our solution comes in at a lower price point. And combine that with the ability to get the application up and running quickly, I believe adds a good value proposition to our offerings. So those 3 areas, Brady, I think what sets us apart from our competition.
Fantastic. That's going to be it for the questions, but we're going to move into a next step slide. Richard, tell the folks out there how they can get in touch with the team, learn more about Vision, and get a 45-minute to 1-hour demo specifically for them.
Thank you, Jason. We'd like to show you how our application is different. We'd like to share with you some of the experience that we've had as an organization. So give us a call, give us an email, and we'd love to set something up for you.
Fantastic. So that's going to do it for today. Be on the lookout for the on-demand version within the next 24 hours. Share it with your team. You know, we know that you're not the only one on your team that this would have an impact on. So share it with your team. It's going to be great content for them to see as well. We're going to create a highlight reel from this webinar, but this is it for this 2-part series. Our next webinar, which is going to focus on a different topic, will be in February sometime. So be on the lookout for date, time, promotions for that too. But that's going to wrap it for today. Thanks everybody for attending. Greg, Kip, Richard, fantastic job. We're looking forward to doing it again soon.